Well, let's jump right in. Dan, thanks for jumping on the podcast with me today.
You're welcome. You can call me Tick Man if you'd like.
Tick Man, I just got back from Montana, coming from Michigan, and Michigan, we have a lot of ticks, or at least more than I've ever seen before. And coming from Montana, where, and I've told the story a couple times, I went to sit the glass for bears, and I look, and I'm like, oh, look at all those ants, and they were all ticks, crawling around like a pile of ants, getting all over us. And so I'd been thinking about this. It bothers me because, like, in the spring, that's when you see it the most, at least, for me. And I'm like, man, I need to know more about ticks. And that was right when you reached out. So I thought, man, it would be the Tick Man himself would be the perfect person to have on the podcast. So why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself, what you do, and we'll dive into ticks a little bit.
Sure. I'll try to keep it brief. If I go on, just cut me off. It's fine. I'm used to it. Well, we have a lot in common. Our geographic areas, the upper Midwest is very similar in tick activity levels as the Northeast. It has historically, these two areas of the U.S. have been really where most of the and a good majority of the reported cases of tick-borne illness occur and have occurred. However, that is changing. So what's happening is we have ticks spreading into new areas very rapidly. There's a lot of reasons for that, and I don't see any slowing down of that spread. So I think up until a few years ago, it was like more than 90% of all reported cases were occurring in about 14 different states,
right,
mostly in the upper Midwest as well as the Northeast. So I actually got started hunting deer kind of later in life, in my late 20s. I don't think I actually ever held a gun until I was in my late 20s. And then like a tick, I was bitten. And I couldn't get out of the woods, and I really, really enjoyed it. But I have a different take on hunting than I think a lot of normal hunters have, and that is that I focused specifically on the phenomenon of suburban deer hunting, or as I like to call it, neighborhood hunting. And outside of Boston, you don't think, oh, well, there's a mecca of giant bucks and whitetails, and all that stuff. But there were pockets of high deer densities, and they were increasing rapidly back in the, I'd say mid to late 90s. And so I took advantage of that, basically. And that's how I got involved with ticks, because at the same time, these deer densities were increasing in these more affluent areas around the suburbs of Boston. The tick activity was also increasing. So, we were looking at deer densities of anywhere between 25 and 30 per square mile, but even more concentrated areas because of the suburban design, the makeup of the suburban settings. So there were pockets of heavily wooded areas, and then pockets in between, homes and corridors that we could map out. So I took advantage of that. I started a group called Mass Deer Service way back when. And what I did was I had a knack for, I was involved with sales my whole life. So I basically turned my sales experience into a private property gathering tool. And what I did was I was able to create a few things, a website. I had signs on my vehicle, business cards, promotional stuff, and I'd go to events and promote a nuisance deer removal service. So that could rub a lot of people the wrong way, but, I didn't start with the traditional approach to hunting. And what we were doing is the real angle that we were taking to get involved with these private properties was, we'll help reduce the number of nuisance deer on your properties. They won't eat as much of your expensive landscapes. You potentially can reduce the amount of exposure you have to ticks. And we can police the area. We can make sure, nothing's going on that shouldn't be going on, which we discovered a lot of, actually, especially in those areas closer to conservation land where there was a lot of, let's say, people hunting that were not legitimately supposed to be there.
So that's the best hunting spots are the ones where you're not supposed to be.
Right. Somebody said to me once, "What does that posted sign mean?" I said, "It means bow only."
Yeah, you got to be quiet. Get in and out in the dark.
Yeah.
What's up? we are going to thank a few of these sponsors that help make this beautiful show a reality for all of you. So
Yeah.
here we go. So a big reason, I would say, to why we're so successful and we have so many bucks on the wall is because we use HuntWise. HuntWise is a GPS mapping app that you can download on any phone, any platform. You can look up public land huntings, ORV trails. You can get the weather. They actually have a HuntCast 2.0 that they teamed up with Jeff Sturgis to make. It's awesome. You need to check this thing out. Go to HuntWise, download the app.
I feel like if you go into the woods without optics, it's like going into the woods without pants on. Would you agree with that?
To a point.
To a point. We are huge fans of running binoculars, spotting scopes, and different things when we hunt, even whitetail. I bring binoculars out every time I go. We choose Vortex Optics because they make the best glass in the business. They have an amazing warranty, super clear glass, super helpful people that work there.
Also, if you want to rep some sweet Vortex swag like this warm shirt on a nice fall day, head over to Vortex Wear. Thank you. And use the promo code TFC20 for 20% off your purchase. Saddle game, you need to be in it. If you haven't been in it yet, then you don't know what you're missing.
Yeah.
Trophy Line Tree Sales makes some of the best saddles in the industry. They have 3 different platforms that we use and that are awesome.
I want to make a quick plug for the Wingman with a couple steps. You can take one less step, stick, and it's like a combination of a stick and a platform. I've been exclusively hunting out of it this year, and my mobile setup is so sweet. I'm very proud of it.
Awesome.
I highly recommend the
Awesome.
Wingman
If you're ready to pull the trigger on that and you want to get with James and do the Wingman, head over to their website and you can save yourself 10% on the purchase. TFC10 will get you that. I like to think I single-handedly got James to switch to compound again, but I'd probably be a liar and everyone would call me out on that. We shoot prime bows. We think they're awesome. Great accuracy, super shootable.
made here in Michigan.
Made in Michigan, so we love that. It's hard to complain.
That's where Jared was made. So
Surprisingly,
we like that. Yeah.
You're welcome. So go check out these prime bows.
We are of a firm belief that the arrow is the lifeblood of the archery industry. We've said it 1,000 times. But in all seriousness, we are huge fans of arrows that are durable, that fly well, and that kind of make up for some of my inaccuracies in the way that I shoot. So we shoot Vector custom arrows.
The hammer.
The hammer.
That's Thor. That's Thor.
They are made in Wisconsin by our buddy Isaac. Great arrows. And if you want to go and get yourself some, have a little bit of a discount, use TFC10 for 10% off. Or call Isaac up and tell him we sent you.
Mm-hmm. You want his phone number? Comment below.
Yep, comment below.
But no, we're with the way the environmental police, the game wardens are around here, they're pretty tough. So especially nowadays, things have turned a little bit more strict as far as law enforcement goes. So I'm not saying that we engaged in any illegal activities. We never would do that. But even if you're not intending to do something, and you encounter our Massachusetts EPOs, you may experience quite a bit of a shakedown. So anyway, so that's how I got involved. So I was getting written permission, which is what's required on private property here in Massachusetts, on exclusive landowners that wanted to get rid of these deer for those reasons I spoke of earlier. And so I ended up I had like 100 properties on the list at one point. All in Eastern Mass and all where there was lots of deer activity. So I then enlisted or reached out to the bow hunting community in the area, and mostly professional guys that, lived in the suburbs, worked in Boston, wanted to get out and go hunting, but didn't have the time to spend a few days at a time. They could get out in the morning, be at work by 9 or 10, even harvest a deer and be at work still, by 10 o'clock. They could come out, pick up their kids, run out into the stand, and everything was cool. And I did charge them what I called an intermediary fee, which was for my service. So I would do the legwork. I would do the interview process. We'd test for proficiency with a license or a certified archery instructor at a range. And if they became eligible, they would pay me a fee, and they would have the choice to renew that property annually. And I tell you, I got a lot of guys that just never left the program until I disbanded it. So At this point, I've got 46 tree stands up, and I don't do the service anymore. I have about 5 or 6 of my good buddies that we all share everything, and we've got, probably between us, 100 cameras out, and
There's some good deer on camera.
I'm sorry.
You have some good deer on camera? You getting some good bucks
Oh
out there?
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. All the time. All the time. But putting them down is another story, as you
Sure.
know.
Yeah.
And while I was with the group, the idea was that we were to remove deer. We were not to discriminate.
Sure.
The only
yeah.
reason the landowners wanted us there was to remove deer. They didn't care if it was a yearling, a skipper, a female, a spike, or a giant. It was just take the deer. And I actually got a bit of grief from a landowner who watched one of my hunters in a tree in the backyard with 3 does underneath him, and he neglected to take advantage of that opportunity because it was close to the rut, and he was waiting for the buck to show up.
Sure.
So we got a lot of we had some problems with that, but needless to say, my home is littered with giant bucks, and that's not because I'm a real buck hunter. It's just that they were there while
At the
I was
wrong time.
hunting.
Yeah.
And I had the biggest state record for muzzleloader in 2008, second biggest archery buck according to Northeast Big Bucks magazine.
What did it score?
It was 185 and 7/8.
Wow.
And that was a muzzleloader. The record didn't hold for more than a year or two, but at that point it was the biggest one. And then it fell, and then I just a nice 159 incher a couple of years ago, and I've got just a variety of deer on the wall in between probably 120 and 150 inches. So it's fun, and I spent a lot of time in the trees. So that's how I got involved with ticks, because I had experienced a divorce where I was now the caretaker, single dad of 2 young boys, and I always loved dogs, so I always have dogs around the house.
Sure.
And I was starting to bring ticks in all over the place.
Yeah.
I was finding them in my bed. I mean, in the bed, in the truck, in the laundry room. The kids were getting them, and I started freaking out because it was a big thing at that time. People were suffering from Lyme. I mean, it's a big thing now, but it was just kind of maturing a little bit as far as cases went, and people becoming more aware because of the sheer numbers of bites that were occurring. So I just needed to do some research on how to protect myself, and I kind of fell in love with the tick themselves. And my favorite is the deer tick.
That's the bad one. That's the one we don't like.
This is the one we don't like, but I kind of have a love-hate relationship.
All right.
And I just dove into it. So I've really been fascinated by these critters for a long, long time, even way before I started really getting serious about protection and prevention. But what I kind of focused on was tick removal, because people really neglected that, and even the experts and the doctors, nobody really talked about it too much. And I kind of looked at what was out there, and they had all these sorts of gadgets, this plastic spoon and
I've seen the spoon,
a bottle cap thing, and I kept reading up on it. They kept saying fine tipped tweezers, tipped tweezers. And I said, okay, well, I need some fine tipped tweezers. And there was nothing specifically for ticks. The jeweler's tweezers I looked up were like $100, and these medical tweezers were real expensive. So I said to myself, what are we going to do here? So I did see the value in what I call the slotted scoop method.
Yeah,
I didn't see the value. I didn't see the value in this product because of the way it's designed, plus the material it's made out of. So I had the idea to incorporate 2 methods of tick removal into one device. And here in my studio / basement, I went to work with all my design experience, which was none. I used tin foil to create a prototype.
Oh, sure. Like most people, making a tick removal device, you grab a little tin foil.
Little tin foil. So anyway, I came up with this, and you could see the scoop on this, and you could see it as compared to that.
So the back of it's a metal prong, and that you use like you use for fixing a divot, right?
Well, basically, you're gonna remove the tick by coming in on it like sideways, and then
Mhm.
all you do is lift straight up. People tend to want to try to pry it up, which is okay, but straight up is a little bit better, just given the anatomy of the mouth parts of that tick.
Yeah.
So that would be good for easy to reach places with larger engorged ticks, like I'm sure you've seen, like
Oh,
those
yeah. They look
big
like gray
suckers.
peas when they get full. I always think like a
Oh yeah.
gray pea.
So
So
that
nasty.
that would be what I would recommend for pets, for animals.
Yeah.
You can go in real quick, lift straight up and pop it out. But more importantly for people is, and
Yeah.
you could see the sharp tips on that. I put an angle on it so you can, for further ease of use, and you can see how it grabs that hair. I've had nymphal stage deer ticks feed in my belly button.
Oh.
And in order, I've done this challenge before. I said, if you show me a nymphal tick in your belly button, you try to use either of these two devices to get it out, or the tick.
None of the scoops are gonna work. No.
I said, I'll give you $10,000 right now if you can,
Yeah.
if you can guarantee that you're going to do that with this tool. So when this product, the Tick Key, says 99.9% effective,
That's the 0.1%.
I don't believe it. It's more
All
than
right.
0.1%.
That's where they normally go. I mean, ticks will go to the warm spots, which are belly buttons, back of ears. Holy cow, look how small those are.
Those are nymphal stage deer ticks. So the problem is, if you have a tick that's feeding,
Yeah.
sorry about that, and it's so small, and you're trying to get it off with this, and you end up not getting it in the slot, and you're pushing down on the abdomen or the soft part of this tick, you're going to rupture it, you're going to pop it, you're going to squeeze it, and then you'll have this stuff that it's very medical terminology here, yucky tick juice.
Yeah, you don't want the yucky tick
You don't
juice.
want that anywhere near you, or the bite side, or near where you put your fingers in your eyes or your nose or anything like that. You're just asking for trouble. So I know you asked me a very simple, quick question.
No, it's perfect. That's where I was headed, because I mean the nymph ones are, they're the worst in my opinion, because you can see the bigger ones, the adult stage, but when you get those little things, I've never found one on me. I don't get bit as much as other people that I'm with for some reason, but I usually see bigger ones, and that always leads me to believe I've got pretty dark, thick hair. Unlike Jared, who's on the podcast sometimes too, he's bald, so he's got no worry about finding ticks on his dome. Right. But me, it's like, man, if there was a nymph in my hair, unless I'm shaving my head, I'm not going to see it. So let's unpack it a little bit, because I want to get into that. So first things first, ticks, right? You mentioned that they're spreading, right? For the first question that comes to mind is why are they spreading? I've talked about this in the podcast before, but growing up, I spent a lot of time in the woods. I was not allowed to come inside. The door was locked. I was made to stay outside. I had me and my two brothers. And so spent a lot of time outside in West Michigan and Northern Michigan. I knew what a tick was. And I didn't really know it though. Like I had never had any exposure to it until, I want to say probably 7-8 years ago. Suddenly I started getting ticks. And so I guess my first question is like, what's going on? Why are they spreading? Why are they here when they didn't used to be?
Yeah. And that's a great question. And I grew up in Maryland, which is a very ticky area now as well. And actually part of my growing up was in Maryland, part was outside of Boston. And, back in the day, I'm older than you, I'm sure of it. We didn't sit and play video games. We were outside. No. And I was thinking, we were tinkering around with our bikes, and we had go-karts, and we were out fishing and hanging out by the pond and all that stuff. Never did I experience a tick. I remember in my memory at day camp one year, there was a dog that had some ticks on it, but that was probably the dog ticks. So that was about it for my childhood experiences with ticks. Now there's a lot of things going on. We have this proliferation of wildlife in suburban settings, as well as in other areas. We have our suburban settings increasing, these regions, suburban sprawl, whatever you want to call it. And, people often kind of tell me, oh, well, there's a reason why, these ticks are in our neighborhoods and these deer and all these other animals, because we're taking their territory.
Right.
And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. What I think is that we're creating an environment where they can thrive rather than taking over encroaching on their territory. We're creating a really nice place for them, because you and I both know that a deer left in the big woods in a brutal or bitter cold winter has a very little chance of survival. Well, maybe it has some chance of survival. But Mother Nature can wipe out a portion of that deer population with, in exceedingly cold winters, because they'll just freeze and starve. I mean, there's no food left for them. In the suburbs, it's quite the opposite. They have plenty of food, and the food not only is available to them when normally Mother Nature would not have available food for them.
Right.
The food contains more nutrition and higher in calorie content. So it helps them survive. They have shelter up against the house. I've seen deer in sheds hanging out. I've seen them under a deck. I mean, it's interesting. They're very, adaptable, of course. So the other thing is that our climate change has played a huge role in this.
I kind of figured that would be the case. I hate when everybody says it. Oh, it's the catch-all reason for things, but I wondered if that had something to do with it.
And it absolutely does, because there's a lot of ingredients involved here with the why the ticks are spreading. But here's also a thing to remember. Remember, I'm talking about deer ticks, but there are different kinds of ticks spreading into different areas, and each of those ticks can have its own set of problems. For example, the Lone Star tick is known for carrying ehrlichiosis, or now this, I think there's another virus that they've been known to be carrying, Heartland virus. But they're not known to be carriers of Lyme. Like the dog tick is more for Rocky Mountain spotted fever than Lyme. But the deer ticks, they are the culprit. They carry everything.
Oh,
and
they do. I didn't know that.
Oh God, there's like 15 different things you can get from a tick, conceivably in one bite. And that would include microbes or germs in the parasitic, bacterial, and viral categories.
Okay. Oh, wow. So covering the gamut.
They cover everything. And now there's a deer tick virus, or Powassan virus, that took the life of a resident of Maine this year already. And that's pretty scary, because the populations are increasing up there as well.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, all right, it could start with the nut trees. Do you know what a mast year is?
Yeah, of course. Yep.
Yeah. So we've been having a lot of mast years, which means there's more nuts. And what feeds on nuts? Well, mice and small rodents love nuts. And these acorns and other nuts are a good food source. So when they have plenty of food, their birth rates skyrocket. They're multiplying like crazy. So now you have a lot of mice and small rodents. And what are what we call competent hosts, meaning they're the primary source for all of these microbes that the tick gets into their bodies.
So they go on like a mouse.
They get on a mouse.
Fill up, they fall off, they crawl back up on that twig. You walk by, they jump on you, bite you, and then that's how you get it.
Yeah. A friend of mine, from an entomologist from the Cape, calls it biologic ping pong. And what happens is ticks are typically known to be born clean. So that means if they bite you at that larval stage, you shouldn't have any worries. Although there's been some studies that are showing now a strain of Borrelia, or a type of Lyme, is now being present congenitally. So, which is not good news, because larval ticks are about half the size of those nymphs, which are just like poppy seeds. So, but let's just go with the clean tick is born, bites a dirty mouse. Now that tick is dirty. So the tick goes through its life cycle. It goes to the next stage of life, and it can now infect a clean host, like a human or a dog or another rodent or mouse.
Yeah.
So that's how it all kind of takes place. So more nuts, more mice, more reservoirs for these microbes, and then climate change and more wildlife provide the vehicle for the ticks to spread. And it's primarily these migratory birds, it's deer, because a mouse might stay under your small shed in the backyard for its entire life. But a deer is in your yard one night, it's a mile down the road tomorrow night, it's maybe, that's really what proliferates the spreading. So more nuts, more mice, warmer temperatures, which mean ticks, less ticks die off during the cold winters. Now, ticks have a substance that their body produces called glycerol, and it's an antifreeze, because these deer ticks will live 2 years. So they definitely winter over, and they definitely survive in areas like where you are in Wisconsin, Minnesota, up on the Canadian border, where it's freezing. I mean, but lately it hasn't been as cold. So
it hasn't. The last few winters have not been as cold.
So you can have the more ticks surviving. And when you have a female tick that takes its last meal off of a deer, and by the way, deer are what we call incompetent hosts. They do not harbor it's not an environment where these microbes can survive for some reason, and nobody knows why, and nobody's really done the studies, but they don't get sick from it, and they don't provide it to the ticks. But usually the adult tick feeds, especially the females, on a deer. And then when they finished feeding, that blood meal will be nutrients for their laying of eggs, and they can lay between 2,000 and 3,000 eggs at a time. The male will typically not feed on a deer. They'll look for the female who's feeding on the deer, mate, and then they drop off and die.
Sure.
That's it. That's their end of life. So what a way to go, right? So the females, if you think about it, 2,000 to 3,000 eggs. A deer can drop easily 5 ticks a day in the fall.
Yeah.
And if they're in my yard tonight and there's 5 ticks that they drop, 5 ticks drop and lay 2,000 to 3,000 eggs. They're in your yard tomorrow night, a mile away, and they drop another 5 ticks times 2,000 to 3,000 eggs. You see how it goes. If you have
spreading it like crazy,
6 or 7 deer in a group, in a yarded up, or even more, you can see how that happens. So the odds are against us, and that's really the reason why they're so plentiful now. And we're having problems up in Canada. I've been contacted by some of the health people up there and other distributors, because it's a new thing, and they're looking to the U.S., who has a lot of experience in trying to deal or claiming to deal with the Lyme disease issue in particular, but definitely has a little bit more handle on the tick issue in general.
Yeah.
So
it's funny. I never, until last year, I didn't know that I could think of a deer that I shot that had a tick on it. But the last 2 big game animals that I shot, a bear and a deer, were covered in them. One was on an island in Lake Michigan, North Manitou, which is known to have a high rate of Lyme and lots of ticks, which we saw them but never got any on us. We loaded up into permethrin. And the other was on this bear from Montana, which actually parts of it, they kind of do that rub in the spring, where you get little patches on their skin. And I'm convinced it was doing that to get all the ticks off of it, because it had a bunch of ticks attached to it, which of course after a while released after the animal was dead. And the deer was the same way. I'm walking around with him in my backpack, did not know that he was full of ticks, threw him in the pickup truck when we finally got ferried off the island, and I'm seeing ticks, just everywhere. It gives me the willies to think about it still.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about the deer tick is, if they do get loose in your home, they probably won't last too long. They are really highly susceptible to levels of humidity.
Interesting.
And so I find that maybe 2 or 3 days max in a Ziploc bag, or even just in one of these little plastic containers that I have, they just desiccate. They'll dry out and die. The different types of ticks have different sensitivity levels to the humidity. Dog ticks can actually handle the lower humidities a little bit better than the deer ticks. So they can survive a little bit longer. But like I said, they're more known for Rocky Mountain spotted fever versus Lyme, and it's pretty rare. In our area, we hardly have any Rocky Mountain spotted fever, but in other areas of the country, it's something to be looking at.
Yeah.
But yeah, up here in northern Maine, I think I read an article where like a majority of the moose fawns were being killed by winter ticks. And these winter ticks don't usually get on people. They're very large, but they just destroy the moose. I mean, thousands of them. They're big. The moose not only becomes anemic from loss of blood from so many bites, but they're rubbing themselves on trees in the middle of winter because of the irritant, and they're removing fur, and they're getting more susceptible to cold, and they're freezing to death too. So it's not a good life for a moose anymore up in Maine.
No, that's nuts. Yeah, I even see, I picked up a puppy, let's see, a year and a half ago, and from Indiana, got him, and I'm convinced he ended up taking him to the vet much later on. They said, oh yeah, he's had Lyme disease and he's got the antibodies, he's fine. You don't have to worry about it. But first I'm like, man, is that something that happened when I had him? And is that tick somewhere in my house? Did it bite that we didn't know? Does one of us have Lyme disease and we don't know it? Or did he get it, where the farm that I picked him up from?
You never know. And once they're exposed, I've got two dogs. Charlie, the black lab, definitely had a tick-borne illness. I didn't spend all the money to find out which one it was, because typically the treatment's the same anyway. And I told the vet, I'm not going to spend the $800 or $900 on these tests. Give me the antibiotics. If in a few days he still is not well, then we'll go back and explore further. So sure enough, after a couple of days of doxycycline, he perked right back up. But boy, I tell you, he was a sad looking puppy at that point. His back legs just wouldn't work anymore. He couldn't get on the bed, and he stopped eating and just laid there and looked at me like,
the worst.
Oh, it's horrible. And the other one, we know he's been exposed to anaplasmosis, which is another bacterial tick-borne illness. So, but he doesn't have any symptoms.
Yeah, I didn't see any on my dog, and he's not a tough animal. So I would have thought I would have seen, him react. Okay, so that's the background of where ticks are, why they're spreading. The other thing is, the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So
absolutely,
we go out there. How do I make sure I don't even get a tick on me? What's your protocol?
Well, I mean, everybody talks about repellents and this and that. And I know, at least in the beginning, for when permethrin was being introduced, it's part of the pyrethroid family. And just to clarify, it is a synthetic. However, it's a synthetic compound formulated after the naturally occurring extract of the chrysanthemum flower. So it's been proven safe in a lot of long-term testings. However, it does not react very well with cats. So it's just the way they metabolize it. But this is a product that is not to be used on your skin. It's to be used on your clothing. Deer hunters in my area up here were concerned about the scent. But, trial and error, it really doesn't have much of an odor, and it really hasn't deterred.
Well, we could go down that scent road. If you're worried about that scent, then there's a lot of other scents that you're producing out of your body that, are probably equally as strong.
Yeah. But, and repellents, not a huge fan of the DEETs or the picaridins or the organics for ticks. I think they work great for mosquitoes and other biting flies, but ticks don't breathe very often. I mean, they breathe from their abdomens. It's hard to see on this, but they have two little spiracles on either side of their abdomen, and they might even take a breath or two every hour sometimes. So they can be crawling across an area of your skin that has DEET on it, not like it, but they'll just continue to kind of mosey around. And if they're crawling up my leg, they'll find an area up north by my, in my crotch that I didn't put DEET on, because I'm not putting DEET on my,
And your
my
D, you don't
private
want that. No.
Right. So they can kind of traipse around on that skin repellent stuff and find a place. So I do like permethrin. I think it's really effective on ticks. As a matter of fact, you mentioned your dog. We recently at Tickies partnered with a company called Insect Shield, which private labels a lot of permethrin clothing for hunters. But this is the Tickies dog bandana. And
Nice.
it is, I put this right on it so people can see, so that if somebody asks, what do you mean it repels ticks? Well, it's treated with permethrin. And if the ticks come in contact with this material for even as little as 60 seconds, it's pretty much lights out. And it may not happen right away. It may take a few hours, but boom, they're done. And it's odor free. It's safe for people and for dogs. And I really like it. And it's designed to be used on top of your Seresto or your Frontliner, whatever your preferred flea and tick preventative is. It's designed to be on top of that, because it doesn't do any good if the tick gets on the dog's butt, if the bandana is around the neck. But if you think about it, where I know that most ticks get on the dog's face, chin, or on the top of the chest, because they're walking through the grass nose to the ground. And so most likely the ticks will come in contact with this and be affected by it. So I love the permethrin. As far as other prevention goes, there's really nothing much you can do unless you get a hoverboard and kind of don't brush up against anything.
Sure.
Our deer ticks are what's called questers. There are two types of methods for ticks to use to get on people or their hosts. One is to quest and one is to hunt. Now, I'll use the deer tick and the Lone Star tick as examples. These deer ticks don't have much value or don't have much activity in their sensory glands, so to speak. The Lone Star ticks have very sensitive sensory pads, or Haller's organs, I think they call it. They can detect carbon dioxide when you breathe. They can detect kind of a heat signature and vibrations. And Lone Star ticks will actually hunt you down. They will detect you from 10 feet away and turn and run towards you. And sometimes they hang out in bigger groups, so you'll have like a little army of.
That's what I had when I was glassing. I looked, and there were the Lone Star ticks.
Yep.
And they just all were coming after me. So I'm lighting them on fire,
Yeah. So that's the problem, because a Lone Star tick now has been proven to carry a protein that will cause you to have an allergy to red meat.
I've heard this, and that sound. I'll take lime over that. I want to be able to eat meat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would do. I mean, I eat so much venison. It's really my exclusive red meat now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something to be concerned with. But the deer tick sensory organs are not that well developed. So they basically take another approach called questing, where they'll sit on the edge of a piece of grass or a bush with their arms outstretched. It's really sticky, like Velcro on the tips of their legs. I don't know if you could, yeah, there's a little tiny little pads. And so anything that brushes by, now becomes, the deer tick will hitchhike a ride on them. So what is the most important thing, I think, really, is to do your tick checks. I mean, it can't be more simple than that, just to be vigilant. Change your lifestyle a little bit, especially if you're a hunter or if you're out scouting and setting cameras. You come home, right when you get in the door, take off your clothes, put them in your hot dryer for 10 or 15 minutes on high heat. That sucks all the humidity out of the clothing, and any ticks that are attached to that clothing will then, like I said, dry out because of the humidity levels. And it's just a rapid way to kill them.
That's a good date idea. You're on a first date, take her for a hike in the woods.
Yeah.
You check each other for ticks afterwards. You claim it, it's for her own safety, and you see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I have a button that says I'm a certified tick checker.
Very nice.
So I say, I have to check you. I'm a professional.
Yeah.
Nothing great, nothing funny, no funny business going on here.
It's part of the Hippocratic Oath. Yep.
um, or the hypocritical oath.
Yeah, that's right.
So yes, so and you're naked, so
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
And
It's easy to see some, but okay. So what about the nymphs? How do you find those little guys? How do you make sure?
that's going to be more of a feeling than anything else. I mean, you were mentioning nymphs are a big problem, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, it's a known fact that, all right, ticks take a blood meal before they transition into another stage of life.
Okay.
So there's egg, larva, nymph, and adults. The females will feed 3 times, the males usually about maybe 2 times, because they don't have feeding on their mind when they're an adult. They want to mate and then they die. So the female deer tick is going to take this blood meal and will nourish itself so it can get to the next level of life. So the older a tick is, the more likely it has infection or those microbes inside of it.
Right.
Just simple common sense. It feeds
Yep.
more, has more of a chance to take in those microbes. The nymphs don't. So on average in our area or in the Northeast, these are about 50 to 60% chance of carrying Lyme.
Wow.
The nymphs are about 1 in 5. So
Okay.
while it's a much less percentage wise, more people are getting sick from nymphs because they don't find them. And you just have to use your repellents, your permethrin, do your checks, feel yourself. It's more of a feeling. You more feel like a little skin tag.
Yeah, when you bump it, you can feel it both in your hand that's rubbing against your
Yeah.
skin, but it feels different when you rub against it when it's attached to you. It's got like a
Yeah, it's
something ain't right
little,
feel.
it's a little floppy.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate in that I get a really nasty local reaction when the tick starts biting. And so some people have thought that I have some sort of, I think it's a histamine response to the tick saliva in general,
Sure.
regardless of whether it's carrying a pathogen that can cause illness or not.
Mhm.
I get a big, nasty red welt, even with larval stage ticks. That's how I find them. I know because I get a big bump and it starts to itch and bother me. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that reaction, and that's where people are going to miss these ticks. So it's a constant thing. I mean, when I had hair, I used to sit around, watch TV at night, and just do this for an hour or two, and just feel around.
I do that same thing.
Yeah, just to feel for anything. I've been bitten about 225 times by deer ticks,
Really?
and I've never had one in my head. I've
Where
had
did
it
where,
everywhere else, between my toes, in my private areas,
pulling a
back
tick
of
out
the
of there, man.
legs.
Yeah.
I get a lot of them here on my sides, under my arms and down, along my rib cage. That seems to be a good spot for them.
And
And
have you ever gotten any disease or any
to
sickness?
my knowledge, I have not. Now, there was a Lyme vaccine available in the late 90s for a couple of years. And my father, who was a physician, worked with some people that were actually on the advisory board for the vaccine. And those friends of his knew what I did, as far as deer hunting, and insisted that I get this vaccine. So
Mhm.
is it working? I don't know. Have I developed a resistance? Nobody knows. But
Well, why did they get rid of it?
it's a long, complicated issue. It was expensive. It was 3 shots. People were starting to complain that they were getting side effects. And believe there was some claims that stated that people that didn't know they had Lyme disease that got the vaccine got really sick. So rather
sure.
than, yeah, and insurance companies didn't, they were against it because of the price. There's a lot of theories going on as to why it didn't survive. Funny how the dog vaccine survived, because dogs can't really complain, and
I'm looking at my dog right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so
He's got the natural immunity by just getting Lyme disease.
Yeah, well, we don't know much about that, and like I said, it's really a difficult thing for the community, for the medical community, to get their hands around this. So you can't fault them 100%.
No,
it's just a tough thing. So anyway, the kind of lost my train of thought here on so the nymphs.
Yeah.
So more people are getting sick from them, and that's occurring now, May and June. because that's the cycle where the nymphs become more active. We're going to start not seeing adult ticks right about now at least in our area, because they're going to fade out and their activity will come back up when the last year's nymphs transition to this year's adults. And that occurs in the fall during hunting season.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen, like I said, on that deer I had shot was in, what's that, late October.
That's when you'll see tons of adult deer ticks.
Yeah, tons of them. This is a question I meant to ask. Are there certain people or blood types or something that attract it or don't? I know sometimes people say that about mosquitoes.
I've heard that theory. I can't really comment either way. I know that usually I get the most ticks out of everybody that I'm walking around the woods with for some reason. Maybe they know I'm Tick Man Dan. I don't know, but
they're trying to take it down.
But I also think that because the questing behavior of the deer ticks, usually a lot of the times when I'm with Buddy or a couple of buddies and we're taking a trail in to do some scouting, we're walking somewhat single file. So it makes sense that the first person or the first couple of people in that line would get more ticks than the last person, because unless they're spread out walking in a line, I'm getting all the ticks that they would have gotten. So
it reminds me of this. You ever read Far Side comics? It's like
it was a long time ago. Sure.
These guys are like walking single file through this jungle, and the first guy apparently he's like mangled up in this. Somebody set a trap, and his body's mangled, and the guy behind him is like, "That's why you never walk first," you know. And that's true, because like I'll go out, I'll get a bunch on me. Usually I'll have more on me than anybody else, but I have always the least amount of bites. Like I've only had a couple actually attached to me where I've had buddies, you know, in Montana. I was with a buddy and he got a bunch. I mean, he's flinging them out of his hair in the shower. He's, you know, picking them off. And the whole time I figured it was because I used so much permethrin. I mean, I used like the big bottle and I just soaked all my clothes.
Good.
But I didn't know if there was a blood thing or what.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to look at, but you know, I couldn't really give you a definitive answer on that. But you know, I suppose anything's possible, you know,
Sure.
with these ticks. So anyway, on the deer around here, I used to collect pregnant female live deer ticks for the University of Massachusetts. Had a tick testing lab, as well as I think I sent some down to Texas A&M and to University of Rhode Island. You know, we're pulling hundreds of them off our deer here. And I go tick hunting, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And I've also had the pleasure of removing about 3,000 plus live ticks from their hosts, just doing my research with my, you know, tick products. So there's no shortage.
So you're pretty good at it. You're pretty good at removing it.
Yeah, and I've tried every single device and every method that you can think of, just to see how they work, so that I can, you know, intelligently say, when I say, I know you can't get a nymphal-sized tick out of your belly button with this. I'm talking from experience.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's important too, just so that I can see for myself, because I don't want to tell you anything that's not true or not valid. I don't want to sell you one of these things because I made it. I want to sell it to you because it actually works.
Especially something so serious. I mean, could be potentially, I mean, it's like life or death if it goes wrong.
Sure.
This is serious.
Absolutely. And you know, there's a lot of components in one's prevention tool chest. Any of them on their own is better than nothing,
Right.
but not going to be as effective as using multiple tools, as many as you can. So, you know, it can all start with your yard, and it can all start with your repellents, and it all can start with, you know, all those things together with your tick checks, and you're throwing the stuff in the dryer. And don't ever get rid of that tick if it was biting you. Save that tick, because you may want to send it to
I've done that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, this is a brand new product, and it was a result of a lot of thinking about all these different tools that you need. So this tick kit from Tickies was designed as a premium tick specific first aid kit, that when, let's say, little Johnny pops in from playing outside and says, you know, Mom, what's this bump behind my ear?
Yeah.
Now, what's the first reaction? Oh my God, you know, what do we do? So when Mom or Dad says, what do we do now? now you know what to do, because you can get this kit, grab it, hang it on the peg, and you have it waterproof. Open it up. It's got everything you need. First thing you got to do is you pull out these waterproof cards, and, so you just discovered an attached tick. Now what? And it takes you through step by step.
Oh,
Proper
very
tick-
cool. Yeah.
Proper tick removal for people, proper tick removal for pets. And where I go a step further is we are in partnership with the University of Rhode Island in a program called Tick Spotters, where when you take that tick out, you take an image of it, you go to follow the instructions on the card to go to their website, submit the image. Now, based upon a lot of different things, the type of tick, the stage of the tick's life, their assessment of how long it was feeding, where geographically you live, and how, and all that information. And then they use data from tick tests based upon all of that, and can determine a low, moderate, or high risk factor.
Okay.
And then what options are there for every risk level? So low, moderate, or high. And then if an option is to get the tick tested at a lab, well, we have our instructions here that will show you how to go to the former UMass lab to get it tested. And you can even save $5 using Ticky's promo code on your tick test. And that information can be useful if you do develop symptoms, or you just want a little peace of mind, because here's the thing, as I mentioned to you earlier, parasites, viruses, and bacteria are different, and you don't treat them all the same.
Right.
Babesia is a parasite. If you test positive, or your tick tests positive for Babesia, but not Lyme, not to give it antibiotics, you give it anti-malarial medication.
Sure.
If it's Lyme and not Babesia, then you might want to start with doxycycline. And it's really important to not take medicine unnecessarily. And this information is between you and your doctor to disseminate as far as what type of course of action to take. So
is there a, that's a question I had coming in, because it's funny you pulled this out. I had that exact thing happen. I was late at night one night. I've got a 9-year-old. She's probably 6-7 years old. Calls me in. What's this thing behind my ear? Just like you said. No, yeah, that's a tick. It's been in there for a while. It's dug in, and of course I tried to pull it out and squished it. And I'm like, oh no, my wife's freaking out. Right? She hated that. So we sent it in. We did the send in thing, and it came up negative. She was fine, but I guess the question I have is, so say you find one on your kid or on you, how long does it take before that bad tick juice is in you?
Right, can cause problems. Yeah, but let me just point out a couple quick things. So in the kit, it has step-by-step instructions. You've got your original Tickies stainless steel.
Oh yeah.
You've got your antiseptic wipes. You've got your antibiotic ointments, and there's 5 sets of each in there. You've got your magnifier, so you can actually see what you're doing.
Sure.
And also has these containment bags, which will allow you to write your name and identify yourself, the date, as well as your tick testing ID number once you register it. So, it's just a handy little kit to have. And like I said, it's very tick specific. Now, you just mentioned about transmission times, and this has been a point of contention for a lot of people in the Lyme community. My feeling is that no matter what happens, get that tick off as soon as possible.
Sure.
If you're talking about Lyme, and some research, and I'm not, advocating or condoning either way, some research has shown that it takes a while for that Lyme bacteria to move from the inside of this tick into the host. And I'm not saying that it doesn't or it does, but I'm saying that even if it does take 24 to 36 hours for Lyme bacteria to get in, it takes 15 minutes for the Powassan virus to get into you.
Sure. Okay.
So, people are like, oh, I'm safe. I got that tick off, in less than 20 hours. Well, did you know about anaplasmosis and tularemia and ehrlichiosis
You
and
can get
Raghuna's bug?
tularemia
From a tick? Yes.
because I know that's a big concern if you're shooting, small game rabbits and stuff when it's not there's not a freeze yet. The
Mhm.
tularemia, I believe.
Yeah, you can get them from ticks.
Lovely.
So, so don't just think you're safe because you think you're safe from Lyme. There's those other illnesses that can be transmitted in varying different times. So always get the tick off as correctly and as quickly as you can. If you're stuck, if you're camping and you don't have a tweezer or a proper device to remove it, get it off any way you can without popping it. A lot of people, in a pinch, you can use a credit card and kind of scrape it. If you leave the mouth part in, it's no big deal. Once the body of the tick is removed, you're at no further risk of being exposed. You've already been exposed as much as you're going to be.
I've got the tick, the tweezers tool you have, the tickies. I throw it in my bino harness. I always take my bino harness out. It's got a little pocket in the back. It's
Excellent.
it folds down nice. So I figure that's probably the safest place to have it. And I've got the box in our family go spot.
Well, next year we'll have an option to have the tickies two-sided tweezer in a folding unit that can be attached to your key ring.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. We're working on developing that right now, but we added these two new products already this year. And so we it's a lot to handle when you're growing a business and you're trying to make the sales and keep up with everything. I'm still really a one-man show here. So
sure.
I wish I had more resources and more time to get everything going that I wanted, but I got to take it step by step.
Well, only one guy, but yeah, you today, I appreciate you taking the time. Ticks are something we've started to talk about more and more. Seems like weekly we have some kind of discussion about them, right? You have to. You're seeing them more than you ever have before. So just you coming on, telling us about ticks, where to find them, what they carry, what to look out for, how to remove them.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure to do this. I've been doing this like crazy. I mean, I do seminars. I talk to kids. I tried to develop a program for children with stories. Where is it? I'm sorry. With stories that they can relate to, and we have these characters like Tiki Lime Bomb and Pal for Powassan and Babs for Babesia. All these great little characters. And we have
that Babs looked like an aunt I had, actually.
Aunt Babs. And we have the good guys here. We have Uncle Tickaway and Antibiotic.
All right, yeah, like that.
Antibiotic. And we have Taki, the blue tick coonhound. And you know where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
So, again, time and this is more of something that I enjoy. But yeah, I do talk to a lot of people. We do some radio stuff. We were actually, the product was featured on Good Morning America last weekend, and we did quite well on their Deals and Steals segment. So the awareness is coming up, and I hope to continue to be like the Smokey the Bear of ticks.
Yeah, you need to have somebody. No, one last question, and then I can let you go. So, and I know this might cut into sales, but say the perfect weather event, right? So like the perfect weather event for wiping out large swaths of ticks. Like what, if I'm looking out for something and hoping for this, this weather event to come and really reduce the tick population, what am I looking for?
Unless lightning strikes an arid plain or your fields and burns it, yeah, I'm not sure anything's gonna do that unless we enter an ice age.
Sure, we need some cold. So some continuous cold.
Yes, but again, these ticks have an antifreeze within them. But I mean,
I was hoping for something a little bit more positive.
No, I can't give you any good news along those lines, unfortunately. But I would like to say that I'm accessible. If anybody has questions, they can contact me easily through the website or through my toll-free number. And, it's at tickies.com. It's very easy. TICKEASE.com. And also the telephone number you can reach me at during business hours is 855-TICK-READY.
Ready.
So
Yeah.
that's easy. You can leave the last DY off if you want. Otherwise, if you type it or you press it in, it'll still get to me. And, you know, we are also looking for some good wholesale partners. So if any of your listeners have shops or work in larger retailers, we would welcome wholesale accounts to be set up.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I'm looking at your social media right now. Tick Ease. Look up Tick Ease, one word, and you'll find it on Instagram as well. So, Dan, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. And, you know, as always, everybody who's listening, if you have any questions, if you're, you know, whatever, anything tick related, you know where to go. So thank you again, Dan.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure to be here. I will leave you with one piece of advice. Tickman Dan says, do your daily tick checks and don't neglect your crevices.
All right. Thank you, man.